Greetings, fellow Poe fans. I became insane with long intervals of horrible sanity, and this is what we may be feeling as in insane once we start this Poecast that we are doing. I am Carmen Bolden.
I am Jeannie Smith.
And we present to you our first episode of
The 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. Hi all, I am Jeannie Smith, and I am one of the Poe peoples that will be on the Poecast. And how many times can we say Poe in one sentence? You will find out throughout these episodes. Now, I do have a background in English. I am a teacher, full-time educator. I started out many years ago being influenced by Edgar Allan Poe through my school teacher, who introduced me first to The Raven, to Annabel Lee, to all that. So when I finally became an educator myself in the English languages, I loved and still love to this day teaching about Edgar Allan Poe and his influence, not only into the past, the present, but also the future of everything historical, science, anything that you can think of. And then I happened to meet with Carmen Bolden, who happened to work at the same school I did, and we found out that, we are Poe people. And that is how we came to be friends.
Yes, absolutely. And what's really kind of cool is we were at the same school, and then I moved to another school as an administrator, and Jeannie came with me and our principal. And now
Not as a stalker, let me just say
exactly,
that.
exactly. Well, post-stalker would be okay.
Yeah, post-stalker, yes.
And then I'm actually now moving back to the school we met at, and I'm going to be teaching 8th grade English, which I'm excited about because I'll be able to teach Poe again. And I've also got a background in teaching English at the high school level, and I was always able to teach about Poe and several of his poems and stories and things like that. My biggest influence originated with Poe in The Raven was the first poem that I read. And then in 1986, the movie The Murders in the Rue Morgue came out, and I immediately watched it because I loved detective things and mysteries, and I immediately went and got a copy of the short story and read it, and I was hooked. But before that, even my middle school teachers and things like that read several things: Fall of the House of Usher, Mask of the Red Death. Just loved Poe immediately. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about what this Poecast is all about. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is the 6 degrees, and what does that actually mean? And Jeannie, what would you kind of link this 6 degrees to?
Well, being Poe as the original OG influencer of both literature, sci-fi, many categories that not people will think about along the way, is how this Poecast will stick in with those 6 degrees of separation.
Just like Kevin Bacon.
Yes. This is long before the bacon.
Exactly. Yes, and you never know where Bacon will come out.
Yeah, he could be in there somewhere.
That's right. And he probably will. Actually, he will, based on a TV show that he did a few years ago.
Yes.
All right. So, if you're wondering, what are these degrees? Well, the first one we're going to call Poe Places. And so, Edgar Allan Poe lived in multiple cities throughout his life and traveled many places based on his life situations. And so we're going to talk about where he was born, where he died, maybe not even in that order, and all the places that he traveled. But also, we're also going to look at places that have things related to Poe that you would not even think of. I was just able to finish a dream for me that was my 50 by 50, meaning that I had just went to my 50th state during my 50th year of life. And and that was Alaska. And you'll never even believe what Alaska Believe it or not, there is an influence of Poe in Alaska, and we'll talk about that on a later episode.
Yeah, talk about way, way out in the final frontier. Get to the sci-fi. But first, everyone knows of Edgar Allan Poe and his horror-filled weirdness that we've all fallen in love with. Pardon me. We first started, like me, The Raven, Knock on Nevermore. One of the famous quotes that you will still hear even today, people using it. So how would his horror-filled world fit in with what we have now? Well, as one of the many influences that I've been taught over the years, you always write about what you know. And the one thing that we do know about Edgar Allan Poe was he had a lot of psychological problems, which ended up in a lot of his horror-filled poems, his mysteries, all that. But then also we would move into the surrealism. Many of us don't think that art, Salvador Dali being the wonderful, wonderful painter that he is, that everybody probably needs to be high on something in order to watch or see any of his artwork. No one would even guess that, hey, Edgar Allan Poe, maybe, we don't want to give it all away just yet. And then finally, sci-fi. Science fiction is the biggest of all. One thing people don't really know is, you ever heard of the word Charles Darwin? That guy in science that gave us, and I know, natural selection. Well, did you know that Charles Darwin may have had a big influence on Edgar Allan Poe and what he may have written about? These are the things that are 6 degrees from separation.
Absolutely. And we've got 2 more degrees that we're going to talk about, one being all of the influences in pop culture. There are many, many TV shows where either allusions to Edgar Allan Poe were mentioned or characters, dreamed after from what he did. Also, even in the comic world, you will be very surprised at some of the things that we're going to talk about based on the comic world. And just thinking about the very first season of The Simpsons, their Treehouse of Horrors, the first one was The Raven. And that's huge. And the Treehouse of Horrors is still going every year on The Simpsons since around late 1980s. The last degree, which is the 6th, is about his literature, his influence of poetry, all of the different types of fiction that he did, especially the detective fiction. We're going to go into in our very next episode and basically look at his origination of the modern detective story. And some of you have read it and may not even know that there are 2 other short stories that go along with that same character. See Auguste Dupin. He was a French detective, and Poe did an incredible job creating him and leaving us with a legacy that it's unbelievable how much he influenced the whole entire world with the detective fiction.
Yeah, because if you think about it, everyone thinks that the first major detective in literature is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. Mm-hmm. What they don't understand is 3 short stories by Edgar Allan Poe influenced Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes. But do we know that? Probably not, unless you've studied extensively Edgar Allan Poe.
Absolutely. And so many other detectives have been influenced by Edgar Allan Poe, and you're going to learn about that with us, and just keep listening and keep learning, and we will provide you with all kinds of interesting facts and research and things that we're going to be doing. The cool thing is both Jeannie and I have advanced degrees, and we're used to doing lots of research to figuring things out and finding out more and more, going into multiple rabbit holes.
Oh, yes, and sometimes you can drop in that rabbit hole and get caught in a whirlwind of things that you never even thought, especially when it comes to history and how Edgar Allan Poe, the man, not just the author, not just the poet, the poem maker, but the man himself had some kind of influence or was influenced during the times that he grew up. from being an American, moving to England. And why, oh why, did he actually write about a Frenchman? You know, why did he choose that particular person? Did he live in France at any time? These are things that we will explore and hopefully get you interested enough to stick with us and find out more.
Absolutely. So our next episode is going to be looking at the 6 degrees of the man, the myth, the legend, Edgar Allan Poe.
Exactly. So please come back, stay tuned, and we will see you soon.
Poe out.
Never to suffer would never to have been blessed.